When I get this image back into post-processing, I'm going to have to do some correction. And see, the lighthouse is leaning over to the left. Instead, I'm going to use the guided upright tool. For the next step, I'm going to go into Photoshop. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me again. Today, my plans have had to change. I had intended to go out to a completely new location, somewhere a bit north of El Campello, which is where I live. A completely different location that I've never been to before. I was going to go and scout it out and maybe take some pictures and, of course, take you along to see what I saw. But we've got a lot of storms going on in this part of Spain at the moment, and the area that I was planning to go to has already got some flooding, and there's a strong potential today of torrential rain and more flooding. So they're recommending not to travel there, so I've decided not to go. So I've decided to do something a bit different today, and I'm going to do another of my request videos where I basically take a request that somebody's left in the comments and do a video about it. Before I go on to that though, I just want to say I haven't forgotten about the filters video. I am hoping that over the next week or 10 days I'm going to get the conditions that I need to go out and shoot it, so fingers crossed it won't be too much longer. But in the meantime, this video is about this image from a few videos ago. And in the video when I shot that image, I said this. When I get this image back into post-processing, I'm going to have to do some corrections because I'm shooting wide angle, and because I've got the camera tilted up a little bit, that lighthouse is going to be off, sort of angled in a bit, so I'm going to have to correct that slightly. Now, in the comments on that video, I had one comment that said, and I'll read it out now: I would like a quick video on how you corrected the lighthouse in Lightroom for tilt. So I'm going to show you. Now, to be honest, I didn't do this just in Lightroom. I did it in a combination of Lightroom and Photoshop. But I'll talk you through what I did now. So let's jump into Lightroom and have a look. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom, and this is the raw file of the image. Let's just get rid of that tab at the bottom so you can see it a bit bigger. This is the raw file of the image. Now, I've done some basic processing on this, so I've been into my lens corrections and removed chromatic aberration and done the profile correction. In the basics tab, I boosted the exposure a little bit, about half a stop, brought the highlights all the way down because the sky here was really bright. Boosted the shadows a lot because there was a lot of dark shadows in the bottom of the scene, and I've brought the blacks down just a little bit, just for contrast, and the whites, well, hardly anything at all. I've also added quite a bit of vibrance and a touch of saturation. The other thing that I've done on this image is added a couple of graduated filters, one at the bottom of the scene here, where I have basically lifted the shadows and the whites just to brighten the bottom of the scene a bit, and one over on the left hand side of the frame where I've brought the shadows up a lot and lifted the whites a bit as well. And the reason for that is the bottom of the frame and the left hand side of the frame was all pretty dark. In fact, if I turn those filters off, you can see the difference. So it's just balancing the image out a bit more. So what we can see here is that the problem is with the lighthouse. So if I zoom in a bit, you can see the lighthouse is leaning over to the left. And that is because this was shot with a wide angle lens, and I had the camera tilted up a little bit because I wanted to favour the sky. So in terms of correcting this, I did this in a two-step process. I'm going to go into the transform section. Now, I've got a number of options in here. At the moment it's off. I could try an auto upright, So just click on that and see what it does. And you can see what that's done is actually made the lighthouse nice and reasonably nice and straight. But look what it's done to my horizon. I've now got a leaning horizon, so that's no good. Turn that off. I'll undo that completely. Instead, I'm going to use the guided upright tool. Now what that does is let me draw some lines on the image that will be used to help straighten it. I think you can do about 4, but I only want 2 for this. And the first line I'm going to draw is along my horizon, and you can see that when I now hover over the image I get a kind of a zoomed box which helps me to draw the line. So if I now draw a line along my horizon there, means I'm going to keep my horizon straight. That's my first line, and then for my second line I'm going to go over to the lighthouse, and then on the side of the lighthouse here there's a lightning rod, so I'm going to use that. That zoomed in image is a little bit tricky to hold still, but all I want to do really is try and draw a line, position a line that aligns with that, because that lightning rod is vertical. So if I click on that now, and you can see that what that's done is actually straightened that up a lot. My horizon is still straight, and now the lighthouse is a lot straighter. If I zoom in and have a look at it, you can see that it's a lot straighter, but it's still kind of got a lean to the left, which isn't really ideal. But for the next step, I'm going to go into Photoshop. So to do that, I'm going to go Photo, Edit in Photoshop CC, and then we'll just give it a few seconds. You can talk amongst yourselves while Photoshop opens and the image gets loaded. Okay, so here's the image in Photoshop, and it's got that vertical correction that I did using the guided uprights in Lightroom. But as I said, if I zoom in a bit, we can see there's still some distortion there, which I'm not that keen on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool, and I am going to select an area which includes the lighthouse and a little bit of the sky, but not much else, like that. And then I'm going to hit Command J to create a new layer that just contains that section that I've just selected. I'll zoom in a bit more. And then I'm going to hit the free transform tool, so Command or Control on a PC, but Command T on a Mac is there. And then if I right click and hit warp, that gives me this warp tool, which I can then use to manipulate that part of the image. Now, to be honest, when I did this on the original one, I spent quite a bit of time playing around with this. I'm not going to spend a long time on this, but I'll give you an idea of what I did. So the lighthouse still looks as if it's got a lean, so these circular balconies are leaning off to one side. So I'm going to just kind of lift things up a little bit like that. Maybe so lift that bit up there. Like that, make the whole thing look a bit straighter. Pull that across like that. It's just a case of putting a few of these little control points around until the lighthouse looks as if it's about right. And then when I've done that, if I just hit enter or return, that leaves the change as it was. Now by doing that, there's a possibility that I might have created some odd stuff around the edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a white layer mask. I'm going to select my brush, make sure it's a black brush. I can leave it at 100%. It's a soft round brush, so the hardness is at 0. And all I'm going to do is just kind of paint in around the area where I don't really want that effect to be in place. So kind of around there. And I need to zoom in a bit more because I want to check the bottom of the lighthouse here. It looks like I might just have clipped a bit out there. Yeah. So that's taken out all of those sort of odd edges that there might be around there. And if I go out to the full view, we can now see that the lighthouse is nice and upright. In fact, if I zoom back in again, I can see yeah, that lighthouse is nice and upright. And back out to the full view, that looks a lot better. And then there's probably a little bit of final editing to be done, maybe a little bit of dodging and burning just to make the image look its absolute best. So that is how I corrected those converging verticals on that lighthouse in that image. Now, to be honest, I don't always have to use the Photoshop steps for converging verticals. Quite often just the guided upright tool in Lightroom will work, but the shape of the lighthouse, the fact that it's round and it had those balconies on it, that kind of meant that it still didn't look quite right, and applying more stronger corrections in Lightroom would probably have meant I started to lose some of the image at the bottom, so I'd have had to have cropped it in and lost a lot of the bottom of the image, which I didn't want to do. So here's the final image again, just for you to have a quick look at. That's it. Not the video I planned for today, but I hope you've enjoyed it anyway. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more from me, don't forget to hit subscribe. There'll be a subscribe button on the screen up here in a few seconds, and there's one down below if you're watching this on the YouTube page. Likes and shares help to promote the channel, so a thumbs up or a click of the share button and sharing this on social media would be really helpful and much appreciated. I love to read your comments and I always respond, so the comments go down below please. And as always, I appreciate you watching, so until the next video, thank you very much and bye.